Shalom, everyone. Today I would like to address the issue of virtual Seder by Zoom. As you all know, yesterday the association known as Igud Hachmei Ma'arav, the Association of Rabbis from North Africa, has published a ruling allowing the conducting the Seder over Zoom this year because of the shelter in house, because of the coronavirus. Shortly after it was published, some of the rabbis, two rabbis who signed, retired their signatures, and today the chief Ashkenaz rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Lau, and the head of the Summit Institution, Rabbi Pearl, attacked the ruling. I want to explain briefly, based on the psak that I have printed out and is in front of me, what is the rationale behind the ruling, and to give a little bit of an analysis, because I've seen comments online that this psak presents no halachic analysis, but as a matter of fact, it does abundantly. For a more thorough explanation in the Hebrew text, you could check my video clip in Hebrew on the same issue. So we'll start with that. They present the question. They say that they were asked by a scholar whether you could use Zoom to connect the elderly and their families who are separated because of the virus. They write about a program and a device which are activated before the holiday, and nothing should be done on Yom Tov. As we will see later, they address the problem of what happens if you do need to touch it on Yom Tov. And as we all know, if you've ever used the FaceTime, WebEx, GoToMeetings, or Zoom, you know that at a certain point, sometimes you have to adjust the settings or turn things on and off. So they ask, are you allowed to use that to do the Seder night as an emergency measure? They answer with presenting presenting the problems that are applicable to this question. So they say, one is activating this device on Yom Tov. Second, the spirit of Yom Tov, or Ovdin Dehol, meaning this action is associated with weekdays and not with Shabbat and Yom Tov. Third, the fear that people would apply this ruling in other circumstances when it's not necessary, or in other words, the slippery slope. So those three questions fall under different categories. Whether you could use it on Shabbat and Yom Tov seems to be a purely halachic concern. Does halakha allow electricity on Yom Tov or not? Ovdin Dehol is more of a conceptual thing. How will this be perceived by the public? And the third one, the fear that this will happen in the future, is a sort of a decree, a preventive measure. So we have three different categories that the rabbis wanted to address here. So they start with the actual act of using electricity on Yom Tov. And they list the great rabbis, most of them Sfaradim and from North Africa, who ruled that this is allowed. Among them, the Rishon LeZion, Rabbi Ben Oziel, Rabbi Raphael Ben Shimon, who lived in Egypt, Rabbis Yosef and Shalom Meshash from Morocco, and Rabbi Moshe Malka and David Shlush, who lived mostly in Israel. And on the other hand, many Ashkenazi rabbis who say that this is forbidden on Yom Tov by rabbinical decree, meaning that not rabbinical from the time of the Mishnah and Talmud, but rather by modern rabbis. And that is because it is hard to argue that electricity is fire. This is the main argument of those who forbid the use of electricity both on Yom Tov and on Shabbat. Electricity is not fire, because electricity is a physical reaction, whereas a fire is a chemical reaction. But the approach towards electricity seems to be intuitive. The rabbis felt first that it is inappropriate to use it on Yom Tov. They said it is forbidden, and then they went to look for explanations. As a matter of fact, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach writes about this, and he says that even on Shabbat, electricity in most cases should be allowed, except for when it generates heat or creates cooking. But the reason he does not want to issue such a permission or a permissive ruling is the fear that people would not be able to distinguish between the cases where it is allowed on Shabbat and it is forbidden. So even on Shabbat. But we don't follow that. But Yom Tov, many Sephardic rabbis, as they mention here, including my great-grandfather Haim Ovadia of Baghdad, and my grandfather Hacham Shaul Ftaya, ruled like that, and that's how we grew up, my whole family. And I want to add to that during all the years that me and my extended family used electricity on Yom Tov, it never occurred to any of us to use radio and TV in the past, or smartphones and other devices in modern times, because we knew very well and intuitively what is appropriate, what is inappropriate for Yom Tov. So that is part of the general methodology of Hamas Faradim, Sephardic rabbis, of giving credit to people and believing that they know how to use the halacha once you tell them the truth. So we'll continue with that. They say, you don't really have to activate it because it's activated from before Yom Tov. And even if you did, even if you touched it, there's no problem because it's mutar. You could rely on the opinions of those who say it's outright allowed to start it on Yom Tov. Or in other words, what is our fear? Our fear that you'll make a mistake and you'll turn it on? You have enough rabbis who say that it's okay. So even if you usually follow the halacha that says that it is forbidden, there's no need to create a new restriction and a new decree if there is a permissive opinion to rely on. Then they say, what about the character of Yom Tov? Now is going to be like a weekday. They don't say that, but I could add that already this year, the holiday is going to be strange and different. Our Shabbatot are strange. We miss the community. We miss being together. This is something that could actually enhance the feeling of Yom Tov. So the rabbis answered that Ovdin Behol Letzorech Mitzvah. Our purpose here is to create a mitzvah and not to diminish the character of Yom Tov. So obviously, if you feel that this is not for you, if you feel that using Zoom on the Seder night will decrease your feeling of the holiday, so don't do it. But if you feel that it's necessary, by all means, go ahead and do it because you have what to rely on. Now, what about the fear that people will take this ruling and will apply it in the future when it is not necessary? They say everybody understands that this permissive ruling is only for an emergency. Again, they understand that people are wise and intelligent and they give them credit. We tell you what the halakha says and you use it as you see fit. We believe that you only use it for this case of emergency. They add that there are consequences that maybe are not foreseeable by everyone. First is the fear that, they write that, the youngsters, the younger generation, that maybe is traditional but not very observant, this generation is only connected to the Leila Seder through their grandparents who join them for Leila Seder. And if they're not there, they might be on their devices doing other things and not connected to Leila Seder. So this is an important overreaching goal of that ruling. Also, they say we have to care about the mental state of mind of the elderly and the sick, being alone, being depressed. There's a risk to their lives, and I can attest to that as a community rabbi for many, many years. I've been counseling and visiting patients in different situations, including terminal patients, and more than once I could see that when a person decides that it's time to go, they just turn off their neshama and they disappear. And we don't want that to happen. It should not be on anyone's consciousness. So if the ruling is there, we should rely on it. So they again emphasize that for a case of emergency, you could rely on that psak and do your seder virtually. Now, in general, people commented. They said this is in one of the news outlets in Israel. They said Hachmei Ha'ida Marokkai, the rabbis of the Moroccan community. Really, it's the Sephardic rabbis in general. There is a different approach. The approach is comprehensive. We'll look at the whole community. We'll look at everyone, and we'll look at the consequences of how this is going to impact the community. Not only now, years from now. Actually, this should not have been unique to the Sephardim. Famous posek, the Shach, Rabbi Shabtai Cohen, who wrote the commentary Siftei Cohen on the Shulchan Aruch, writes that you have to be very careful not to forbid something which is permissible, because it will always could lead to a leniency. Meaning, if you're strict now, if you forbid something now, after 100 actions in a chain reaction process, something lenient will come out of it. So if we think that we are strict by not allowing people to use Zoom for Leila Seder, this is being lenient in allowing people to drift away from Judaism or for people to risk their lives. Also, another important statement with which I will conclude is that of Rabbi Yosef Meshash, whose book Otzar HaMichtavim is right behind me. In case you don't know who Rabbi Mishash is, please find the time to see who he is. Here's his picture, Malach Elokim. Rabbi Yosef Mishash writes in another psak, he says, אי אפשר להחזיר את הזמן, את הגלגל אחורה, עם התפתחות הזמן בכל דבר ודבר. There's no way to turn the wheel back. Technology, modernity is here. The rabbis are unprepared. They are talking about technology that is already ancient, and we are moving so fast. The fact that the technology is here means that you cannot tell people, oh, we survived without it 100 years ago, just go on the same way. What if you had the quarantine in the 1900s? You would have to do it alone. Yeah, it's true. We would have had to do it alone. But now the technology is there, and people want to know, tell me why I'm not allowed to use it. Some people will follow the psak, some people will not follow the psak, but the fact that it's out there shows people that halakha cares, that solutions can be found. I would like to conclude with a blessing and prayer for all of us that whether we choose or not, or we choose to use or not use Zoom on a Seder, that we'll be happy and we'll feel united with each other, that disagreement over halachic issues should not cause animosity, should not cause anyone to attack another, but rather respectfully say, I disagree with this opinion, I'm not going to follow it, but you can follow it. I also would like to wish and pray for refuah shlema, good health and speedy recovery to all who are ill all over the world, and especially to issue a blessing to the doctors and the medical community and all other people who are putting their lives on the line to make sure that our lives continue as normally as possible, and to find a cure and a solution. May we all have a wonderful Pesach, and may we be able to be united physically soon.